We have some amazing news, everybody. Anthem is getting a huge patch this Friday with a ton of fixes and quality of life improvements coming our way. We're going to check that in just a bit, as well as some of the stuff that has been talked over on Twitter by the developers and a few extra key points I wanted to bring up about the game after experiencing all it had to offer. So let's get going with the news. And somebody working at BioWare posted this extensive list of changes we're going to see on launch day, and it was posted over on Twitter. It's too long to go over all of the fixes and the changes in it, but I will highlight the important ones. So yeah, let's just get started because I'm super excited to bring it to you guys, and I'm also seeing a lot of stuff that I wanted to see personally being changed in Anthem. So let's begin with the high level fixes. We have improved loading times, fixed many infinite loading screens, fixed multiple challenges not tracking properly, a number of issues have been fixed that were causing players to disconnect or crash, and finally, weapons and gear now have numbers present for modifiers. And I think the three most important in this category are of course the loading times, the infinite loading screens, which I had no clue still happen, and of course number of crashes and disconnects. And especially the loading times, man, those are so annoying. Even on an SSD, the sheer number of loading times is what gets me. I think the biggest issue right now with the game, among many other things, is of course the abundance of loading screens. I've said this in the past. Overall, I think BioWare needs to do something to reduce the number of them. I also know many of you guys had problems disconnecting or crashing. It also happened to me on a couple of occasions, especially the crashing bit, but honestly overall I had a rather smooth experience. I know a lot of people had some game-breaking bugs, but I'm also seeing those being fixed later down to the list, so yeah, I'm not gonna stay on this one. It's pretty much self-explanatory, so let's get moving with the general fixes and improvements because there's some really cool stuff in here. So first of all, we have loot reveal and expedition summary now correctly play during the end of the expedition screen. Then we have the gather party mechanic has been made more lenient in a number of situations, and I believe this is talking about the out of boundaries thing that appears on the screen. Super annoying, but I think the mechanic in general should be pretty much scrapped. At the end of the expedition screen, players will no longer get stuck on recording victories or skipping all. Game no longer hangs in Javelin menu when unlocking the second, third or fourth Javelin. Then we have a couple more small ones like challenges unlocking for players at the correct levels, fixing some of the camera issues during cutscenes. I've also experienced this towards the end of the story and I got really pissed because I missed some very good cutscenes and it was just a complete mess. So yeah, it's kind of too late for me now, but whatever. At the very least, those who are going to be playing on the 22nd are not gonna hopefully have this happening to them. Legendary contracts can now be accepted from the Social Hub contract board, and I am glad that is the case because I have no clue which is the regular contract and which is the legendary contract. There's no distinction whatsoever in the game. All I know is that there's two colors of contracts, one is yellow and one is purple, and I assume that the purple one was the legendary contract. Then we have some enemies had their shields value decreased, and this was actually a great change, at the very least in the beginning hours. In the beginning hours, you're going to have some really big problems with shielded enemies because you don't have access to big, powerful items or skills. Once you reach end game and once you get some of the very powerful weapons in the game, the shielded enemies just become nothing. I mean, seriously, there's a weapon in the game that does electric damage on hit. And that is just OP, dude. Like, that just melts shields, and the fact that some of them have the shield values decreased, especially, and I'm especially referring to the snipers, that is amazing. Loot now properly drops for players who are downed, and this was another big issue that a lot of people had. The biggest quality of life change here, the one that I love the most, is this one. Final boss of Strongholds now drop loot instead of only being shown at the end of the expedition screen, and this is the single best quality of life improvement I've seen so far, having the bosses finally dropping some loot and having some feeling of accomplishment after defeating those huge annoying pests. Now, the only additional feature I would like to see on top of this one, which would complement it really nicely, would be to not automatically finish the expedition when I just kill the boss. I just want to stay in the dungeon for a little bit longer, talk with my buddies, move around a little bit, and you know, just have that raid experience or dungeon experience that you usually have in other MMOs demos. I really want to see that more of, and if BioWare does end up implementing it, they're going to have a huge plus from me. Then we have fixed the timeouts on echoes and relics to prevent griefing and to handle disconnections properly. I honestly thought this was already fixed. I had some of my party members at one point, it was a random dude who just got one of the echoes and he wouldn't give it in, and I was pleasingly surprised to see that after a couple of minutes he actually lost that thing and I was able to pick it up for myself. So further improvements to that and avoiding griefing is a bigger plus. After disconnecting, rejoining an expedition will now place you back into a squad if you were in one previously. Then we have corrected an issue where players could not interact with each other in launch bay in certain circumstances. The start of the expedition screen has been improved, addressed a variety of situations where killing enemies does not probably progress world events. Opening a chest now increments Tomb of the Legionnaire progress for all squad members present. Scar snipers can no longer shoot through Storm Shield. This has to be probably the single biggest change to Grandmaster difficulty. If you played Grandmaster right now, especially against snipers and especially as a Storm, you would probably know that snipers can literally one-shot you at times. So I'm going to test this one out on the 22nd, see how it is in the Grandmaster difficulty, but from the looks of it, it seems to be a rather huge change that is going to make Grandmaster a little bit more manageable. Right now, yeah, you're kinda like getting destroyed by a single bullet if you're not too careful. Corrected an issue where players would get stuck on the end of the expedition screen in some situations, addressed a number of situations where players can get stuck on the environment in the launch bay, increased the damage of the electric status effect. The platinum mission feat now grants completion as intended. Status effects can more reliably be applied to titans. You need so much status effect to apply it to them, like you literally only have it during ultimates. So yeah, hopefully this will mean I can finally freeze that annoying titan in place because he's doing way too many attacks. Now moving on to Strongholds, because Strongholds is going to be a big part of the game and we have a lot of fixes here, including fixed an issue that would cause Stronghold server crash after defeating the last boss. Then we have Temple of Scar, a couple of fixes, very good ones. Players can no longer get stuck in the mine tunnel in the explosives room, and then the second one, players can no longer be blocked from entering the explosives room due to fog wall. We have a fix for the tyrant mine so people that join the Stronghold in progress do not end up locked away from their team. Adjusted lighting in tyrant mine underwater sections to make it easier to navigate to the exit. The swarm tyrant will no longer get stuck in the side caves entrances in some situations. Some situations is lightly put because in most situations, at least for me, I've seen him getting stuck in those annoying caves. Like, it was super funny considering that the demo didn't have this problem but the full game had it. So yeah, it's getting fixed. Corrected an issue where players would spawn into different areas of the tyrant mine in certain situations. We also have some gear and weapons changes. After having first pilot unlock suit after tutorials, creating a new pilot and going to a forge no longer causes loading screen hang. Suit white bonuses from inscriptions are now functioning properly. Thank you, because this is a huge one. You have all of those beautiful inscriptions, all of those powerful effects, and a lot of them don't work, especially the ones that deal with cooldown reduction, with increased damage. Players can no longer salvage equipped items. Javelin specific gear and or weapons are no longer able to be used on javelins they aren't intended for. Corrected an issue where in some circumstances masterwork components do not have any inscriptions. And finally, in this category, the Endless Siege Masterwork autocannon no longer displays a damage increase of 0% in its tooltip. Moving over to javelins and crafting, the Colossus Javelin is now able to activate its shield more quickly after using an ability or firing a weapon. The Storm Javelin now reacts to getting hit when its shields are up. Fixed an exploit that allowed the Storm ultimate attack to be used more times than intended. Rest in peace, all of the abusers. The Colossus Javelin can now shield and revive at the same time. Another huge change. Very important, and this is probably one of the biggest issues why I didn't start playing with the Colossus. I couldn't revive with my shields up and I was pretty much a sitting duck, but with this, man, I cannot wait to get back into the game and actually play with my Colossus. Now we have the Interceptor combo aura has been increased in power and now has a damage over time component. Yes, you read that right, a damage over time, so you're pretty much going to walk around, apply dots onto enemies as well as the status effect itself. Non-masterwork materials purchased from the crafting store now shows as their proper rarity instead of incorrectly showing as masterwork. Then in the control section, additional mouse and keyboard control improvements have been made, and I already felt my controls on the keyboard and mouse to be rather snappy. They were very good, especially compared to the demos that I've played, so further improvements can only be a big plus. Now let's go over some of the UI changes, and this is the last section that has been posted, and I'm going to begin with some conversations were not popping up the reputation points post conversation completion. This has been fixed. In case you don't know what this is, basically when talking to some of the NPCs in Fort Tarsis, you would sometimes get reputation with 1, 2 or even all of the factions in the game. Sometimes this wasn't being displayed, and now this got fixed. The squad screen now displays the correct information for each player. Settings should no longer reset upon exiting and restarting the game on the Xbox One. Motion blur can now correctly be turned off. The electric status effect now shows scaled damage properly, and I have no clue what that means, but hopefully it means a damage increase. The edge of the compass will now pulse to indicate enemy locations. A notification has been added to Fort Tarsis if a player's vault is at the cap of 250 items. Primers and detonator icons have been added to all interceptor gear. And last but not least, corrected a user interface issue where a player's ultimate would show as available when it isn't. This is another big one, man, at least for me. So many times have I gone with my storm in the middle of the combat thinking that I have my ultimate available, only to get cocked and pretty much destroyed by the barrage of bullets, man. This happened way too many times to even feel comfortable, so finally it was going to get addressed. But as I've said, this is going to be on the 22nd, so there you have it. I also wanted to talk about one of the exploits that was happening this week. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, only that it let you get a lot of masterwork items by doing some cheese farming method. I haven't done this one personally. I think it was like really bad. I was already doing a lot of dungeons, a lot of contracts, and had pretty much all the gear that I wanted, but I will say that that got a update posted by BioWare Chris Schmidt, and he said the chest hunt fix is already live as of right now. So if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be super appreciated. Also make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'm going to announce the winners of the giveaway tomorrow, by the way. This is going to be for the giveaway that is still running. If you want to take part in it, you have like 24 hours to go, so yeah, go ahead and check it if you want to. But I'm going to see you guys later, so peace out.